The fraud landscape for 2024 is really very fascinating. It's covering the full spectrum of fraud. We're seeing an increase in check fraud, something we haven't seen in years. Of course, the fraudsters are attacking businesses typically, but we're also seeing insider threats with check fraud on the rise as well. We're also seeing a continuation of P2P fraud. This is particularly frustrating for banks, as there's very little you can do to stop this without educating your customers more and more. And unfortunately, they don't always listen. Likewise, account takeover fraud is on the increase, and the fraudsters are getting very good at this. They are impersonating the bank's website, directing the user to this fake website, collecting the user's credentials, and facilitating the multi-factor authentication code to the real bank website, collecting it at the same time, logging in and taking over the user's account. When it comes to cybersecurity, I believe the real problem is a lack of good training. Typically, the training that bank boards get when it comes to cybersecurity is overly technical, and it's focused on fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and the boards tune this out. What boards of directors really need is training that focuses on the business of cybersecurity and how it affects the bank and what we are doing within the banks to stop the cybersecurity risk. Once a director understands the cyber risk posture of the bank, they should use that information to spur on better conversations with the Chief Information Security Officer on a regular basis. Now, there's one thing directors need to understand. You as a director are responsible for setting the risk tolerance level for the bank. And that means that you need to understand what the risk tolerance is and why you have set it there. That may come through training, or it may come through bringing a consultant in to assist in setting that risk posture. Once you understand that, you need to know, what is your Chief Information Security Officer doing to measure and monitor risks? What are the KPIs that have been set to help understand where we map to the risk posture? Are we overspending in some areas? Are we underspending in other areas? And can we tighten that gap up a little bit so that the spending is appropriate for the risk tolerance levels that we have? How are we educating our employees? Do we recognize that they're our front line of defense? How are we educating our consumers? That is also a really important area. While it may be low risk to us from a cyber risk profile, it's a great community outreach, and it prevents us from experiencing as much fraud with our bank. Artificial intelligence is a hot topic everywhere. However, I don't believe this is going to be the story of 2024 when it comes to fraud and cybersecurity. It is increasingly being used in the fraudsters or the hackers' toolbox. However, it's not the primary tool at this point in time. It's being used to make their attacks more efficient, more consistent, and frankly, help them to do more with less as they're doing that. Believe it or not, hackers and fraudsters operate just like businesses, and they have to cut costs everywhere they can and become more efficient. Now, in turn, we as banks ought to think about that as well. How are we using artificial intelligence to stop these attacks? How are we using it to make our processes more efficient and more effective on the offensive side of this equation?